Hey parents, one of the things we wanted to do during this time is to begin to interview and talk to experts about what is parenting like during this COVID crisis. And so we're blessed today to be talking with Dr. Jim Burns. Dr. Burns is the president of HomeWord Ministries. And Dr. Burns, he's written over 2 million resources and has them in 30 different languages all across the world. And he speaks to thousands of people a year about parenting and marriage. And so we're blessed today to speak with Dr. Burns.
We know parents are struggling with all of this, and one thing is that we're in a it's been called the cancel culture, but not canceling like this. And so one thing we've noticed is everything's getting canceled, and so graduations, for the most part, canceling. Weddings are canceling or being trimmed down to just the bride and their family and groom and their family. A lot of changes, a lot of disappointment that people are dealing with. A lot of milestones are not going to be celebrated the way they were for brother and sister, and the way they'll be celebrated in the future.
Right.
What advice would you have for parents in dealing with that disappointment? Because certainly the parents are dealing first with their own disappointment that they're not up there and that they're not having the big whatever it is, birthday or graduation. But then we also have to deal with the kids. And so what are some thoughts that you have in dealing with all that disappointment?
Well, actually, in your question, I think you gave it an answer. First of all, we've got to deal with our own grief and our own sense of loss. And honestly, it's grief and it's a sense of loss because we don't get to do it like we've always done in the past. And then I think we pretty quickly, after we've dealt with that, we move into how can we make this a celebration? For example, somebody here in California, they went through their last cancer treatment. And when you go through your last cancer treatment at some of these hospitals, they'll throw a big party for you. Mm-hmm. And parents couldn't even come to it. So this young woman's 18 years old. She's there by herself. It was great. She was thrilled that they said, you're free, you're cancer free for right now, go be good. What the mom and dad had done, gosh, I almost teary-eyed thinking about it, just happened yesterday, but they set up at each kind of block on the way to their house, friends and family. Gosh, I'm losing it here. But friends and family who were like, signs and way to go and congratulations and all that stuff. Well, that took some time and effort on those parents' part, but that was so meaningful. Then they interviewed this girl. Again, they're in a situation, just lost my microphone. They're in a situation where, they're quarantined. So the beautiful part of it was, they could interview, but still from a distance. But this girl, there were tears, there was excitement, there was joy. What a great thing.
Yeah, so Matt, we need to be looking for new ways to celebrate. It may not be the way that it was before, but communities, a lot of people have done bear hunts where they put the teddy bears up. You may have a version of that for graduation or a version of that.
Sure, no, exactly. We have some good friends who had their daughter was supposed to get married a week ago, and they were going to, in California here, they were going to close it off. So what they did was, it was 3:00 in the afternoon. They were going to basically close off weddings by 10 that night. So they had a wedding by 7:00. And
wow.
They brought it, the grandma and grandpa were there by Skype, and there were these different things that happened. And then they'll throw a party later. Well, you know what? How great for them. Now, again, it's a different, even the honeymoon is a different situation because where do you go? What do you do?
Yeah.
But, I think we have to make the best of it. You're seeing this with the sadness of anybody who's a senior in whatever, senior in high school, senior in college, whatever, they're not having the same experiences that we did when we graduated and the celebrations and things. So I think parents have to make it happen differently. We have to do the same thing in our homes when we're quarantined. I think it's so important as parents to take the lead and have some serious fun because, this is frustrating and it's sad for many. And so, I've talked to people who have brought out the old thing for 16, 17, 18-year-olds called the board game. And they're going, God, we played this game when we were little. We never even heard of Candyland or something. And they're having it and having a fun time, but, bringing in some more fun food, trying to make it as fun as possible. So we have to adapt. We grieve, we experience a sense of loss, yes, and then we adapt and make something happen.
Yeah, and with that, one thing I've noticed in the news is that they're starting to talk about, hey, if we're good, we'll get 100,000 people that die or 200,000 people.
Yeah.
And I know with my kids, they're starting to watch CNN and Fox News and pay a little bit more attention. How do we as parents deal with that? They're becoming more aware of the virus. The virus was something that got them out of school for a little bit, and now it's sunk in that this virus is maybe something more than just a snow break for them. How do you talk to kids about the virus and about the fact that, a lot of us are going to know people who've been sick, and that's going to be like, well, does that mean that person is going to die? Because they're beginning to hear some of the really negative talking points that you're hearing in the news currently.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important that we think about age development because, when kids are older, they can watch CNN or Fox News or whatever. When they're younger, I don't think you put it on during that time. And frankly, even conversations around the dinner table with younger kids, I think have to be muted because they don't understand. They're concrete thinkers. So they think they're going to die, or they think mommy or daddy are going to die. So I think we have to be really careful with it. In fact, even for us as adults, I think we have to, I'm telling people, sure, keep up to date in the morning and keep up to date sometime in the evening. But like for me, I actually hear about it in the morning, and then I hear about it in the evening, and then I kind of put it aside. And I'm doing that partly because I could get so pulled into that. And back to 9/11, the Boston marathon bombing, things like that. Studies showed that people who spent too much time on that and focused on it all the time, obviously they need information, but who focused on it, actually they experienced more anxiety, more depression, actually PTSD for up to 3 years. These are studies, this is a research study. So I would be careful with it. At the same time, it becomes an opportunity to have conversations with your kids as they get a little bit older, even the kids who would be, young teens and teenagers, to have a conversation like, why would this happen? What about tragedy? My small group Bible study, we now meet on the phone, but we looked at Psalm 62, and it's a cool psalm about God is our refuge, even in trouble. And, we may have trouble, but he's our refuge. And so interestingly enough, with our family, I have my daughter, her husband, and 2 grandkids living with us because they're in a transition of moving, and they just happen to be in our house. So now they're there. Yeah. And we actually had a little Bible study on Psalm 62. The little ones didn't get it as much as my, daughter who's married and stuff. But it was really neat because we had a conversation about, tragedy and not, I don't think we make this sound too positive either. I don't think we have to make it sound so negative. I heard on the radio yesterday, driving back home, a doctor said, you have a 96.4 chance of living through this virus. And then he explained it why. It was all scientific. And, this was not some goony guy. And I went, oh my gosh. And he said, and I laughed at this, I probably wouldn't spend time in Las Vegas like this, but he said, I would bet the house, if I had that option, I would bet the house on whatever gamble, it is. And he said, you have a greater chance of, dying of this, that, or the other. Well, that was a good conversation for us because we looked at the positive side. Then in our family, one of the things we've been doing, and I think others can do this too easily, is we sit around the table every night now because we're not going out like we used to. And we sit around the table and we say, okay, what's 3 good things that happened today? And what are 3 good things we're thankful for? And it's really been kind of neat. And, we've got a 2-year-old and a granddaughter and a 4-year-old grandson who's sitting at the table, and they're coming up with stuff. I mean, it's not, the 2-year-old is kind of hilarious because she was thankful about 2 days ago that she had sat on the potty and pooped. Here we are talking, pooped.
That's
on
big
the potty,
time. Trust me.
And we were cheering and all this, and we kind of laughed. We're going, there's probably not a lot of people sitting around tables going, hey, I pooped, And then I laughed and said, my dad used to talk about that when he was 89 too.
It all comes back.
Really cool. We're creating some cool memories that way as well.
That's true. Now, one thing I've noticed that is awesome, a lot of families are meeting together, but just the kind of inundation of technology right now, we're all slaves a little bit to it. School is all on us, and a lot of Facebook Live for school. Churches, I just filmed videos for kids ministry to be customized and filmed and shown over Vimeo and Facebook. Obviously, then there's also just the fact that most people are in their home, and that tends to lead more toward video games and technology. But a lot of us also have a battle of screen time limitations. Yeah. How in the world do we, when we're all kind of being called to relationships, like you mentioned, your life group meeting online or meeting over the phone, our life groups are meeting over this format of Zoom. How do we deal with all of that during this time? And what are some of the ways to get like long-term ramifications you think of all of it?
Well, I think on the positive side, lean into it. My daughter and her husband were in their life group yesterday. We actually put the grandkids to bed because they were in their life group. I have a little office there, and they Zoomed it with all of their people. And my goodness, they did an hour and a half meeting. Plus, they got out of having to put their kids to bed. It was, and Grandma and Grandpa loved it. You know what I'm saying? But so I think we lean into the positive sides of it. I think we have to be really careful that we just don't put all of our energy into it, or get lazy with our kids and let them have too much just free media time. I think we really have to decide, let's create a media safe home. And a media safe home doesn't have too much, game time, things like that. Now, again, I'm not saying all gaming is bad. I'm not saying all media is bad, but it's not neutral. And so the more, especially when younger kids are online all the time playing games, because it's kind of helping their mom and dad, because mom and dad, they're going crazy themselves. And so it's kind of a babysitter. Your brain is still being wired, and it's still growing, and your brain doesn't stop developing until you're 24. So the mushy part is the frontal cortex, which actually is kind of forming wires and whatnot. And all studies are showing that if we put too much energy into screen time, even not the worst of screen time, but some of the fun games that are out there and all the goofy things, if they do that too often, then really it becomes a bad habit. And it's interesting because it goes to the stimulation package. That's the same stimulation package that somebody would have when they're having a physical intimate relationship. Well, with kids, obviously that's not a physical intimate relationship, but their brain doesn't know the difference. So the brain's saying, I want more. And so now you've got a kid who, in a season like this, if we're allowing them to spend too much time on the screen doing whatever they do, at the same time, we have to realize that they need, when my daughter Heidi, she's my youngest, and she was talking to me the other day about talking with her friend. And I said, oh, wow, how cool is that? And I'm thinking, I'm an old guy, I'm thinking telephone. She's going, oh, no. I text with her most every day, or we're connecting on Instagram or whatever. Well, kids need that time to be in connection because they need replenishing relationships. And that's what I love about what's going on in the church today is, like at our church, Doug Fields is actually the youth pastor. He's quite a great youth pastor. But what they're doing is they're having, times where they're, all getting together. There's chat rooms, there's hangouts, there's fellowship time. Wednesday is a live program that they produce, and then it's, they can see it on video as well. Well, all those kind of things are cool. You just don't want to do it all the time.
Yeah, I think that's great. Now, you mentioned board games, which is awesome, and I'm sure card games and families are doing. What other tips do you have maybe to draw those families that are struggling with just kind of letting the iPad parent them or letting the video games get too much? What are some tips of steering away from that families can do that would be proactive in that?
What I'm loving in our neighborhood, and I laugh at this because I'm not one who knows everybody. I've lived in the same neighborhood for 35 years, and I have a wave relationship to a lot of the people. I haven't been good. My wife is great. She knows everybody. But I'm watching families out there walking together. We have a woman who lives across the street, and two of her college sons are back. And I'm sure those college sons are going crazy because they were free and they're in sports, and they're doing great stuff, and now they're with mom and dad. But they took a walk. We live by the beach. They took a walk, a mile to the beach. They took a walk to the beach. They said they went 7 miles, the mom and the one son.
Wow.
Well, those kinds of things are, where there's some great connection stuff. My daughter and her husband and the 2 kids went to Aunt Pam's house, which isn't very far from us, and they had to stay social distancing away. But my daughter brought some stuff for them, and they sat out in the front yard and they had great time. It was harder for the 2 and 4-year-old because they wanted to go hug, Auntie Pam. But the point being is that, no, I think you can do some stuff with that. There's still things you can do. Make it fun. One of the big phrases that I've been saying to people is have serious fun. Make this a time where, you are drawn together when you have fun. So you can have fun with stuff that, 3 weeks ago was nerdy. Today it's not nerdy, in terms of, like I said, some of the board games, things like that. We've got a jigsaw puzzle. I don't think we've had a jigsaw puzzle at our house for 100 years. We've got a jigsaw puzzle on the table right now, on this dining room table, and everybody kind of comes and, plays with it ever so often. And I was all excited because I'm terrible at jigsaw puzzles, and I found like the missing piece last night. But I sat there and I studied it, and I finally made one piece, and I walked away. Well, eventually we'll have that jigsaw puzzle made, and for some reason that's a conversation piece, for us.
Yeah.
So I think you do those kinds of things. I mean, you figure out how to have fun in the midst of it. We've got a little place near us with our younger kids. It's called Zumar, and it kind of costs big bucks to go to Zumar. You can't go to Zumar, but you can go and we walked around the outside of it because you could see so many of the animals. And the kids thought they were at Zumar. We went, this is the new way to do this. We're not going to spend all this money. Look at, that's a llama, blah, blah, blah. Here's the guinea pigs, different things. It was funny. But, oh my goodness, I got it. A second. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, they, those are the things that, you can do. So, be practical, be creative. And, I think the essence of creativity is the ability to copy. So learn what other people are doing. You can see that online. You can do that from other people at the church and say, hey, so what are you guys doing? Oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Let's go do it.
That's wonderful. I know one of the last things I wanted to ask you was one of your passions is marriage ministry. And certainly we've seen that this is highlighted probably the good and bad in a lot of marriages, and
right.
Listening to reports and police, a lot of negatives. If they kind of went into this time with an unhealthy
right.
marriages, it amplified it. So for marriages that maybe they weren't struggling until maybe even they got into the quarantine and can have the normal date night rhythms are all gone from all of that.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to them? Because that's obviously you're not going to parent very well if your marriage is really struggling.
No.
During this
That's
time.
true. And it is, I look at it as a potential gift. And at the same time, you're right, it's hard. Houston police came out with something. It's not real. It's a fake, but it said 0 murders, 0 robberies, 0 this, 84,000 domestic fights between husbands and wives. And, we laughed at it because that's probably not the case, but, it is more tension. So you're going to be in there. So, do some of the things that are going to lean together. Like, for example, Kathy yesterday texted me, and she sent me a really cool little Bible study. And we have a friend who has taught us that if you pray together every day, for couples who pray together, say the divorce rate is somewhere around 50% still, which is horrible. And yet if you pray together every day, a study out of Columbia University says that it's 1 out of 1,100. And so this group, which is incredible, by the way, I mean, that should just be a mind blower to people. But when you're in this case, you have more time to pray. So Kathy was saying to me, we kind of do this. We wrote a book called Closer, and it's a book where we challenge couples to spend 20 minutes a week in spiritual intimacy. And she goes, we should start doing this more than weekly because we have the time. Let's lean into this. Do you have any ideas? So she actually was throwing back something that I teach on, but said, we can do this more often. And I find myself every morning with Kat, like today, I didn't come into the office as early. Now, again, I'm still coming into the office. It's an extension of my house. So I'm very fortunate. But with Kathy, I said, hey, I'm going to go walk the dog. Do you want to go with me? So, 7:30 this morning, we did 2,400 steps because I'm into steps. We did 2,400 steps by walking the dog together, and we connected, which is not usual for us. So even with our daughter, we have another daughter, our youngest I mentioned, she's married, and she announced yesterday she's going to have a baby. She's going to call the baby Corona. And we said, please don't call the baby Corona.
Corona, yeah.
But, we encourage them to still go on dates, just do it differently. With our daughter who's living with us, we said, what's your date night? Because we're going to watch the kids, and they're going like, where are we going to go, or what are we going to do? So they kind of moved their date night to more of an afternoon. My daughter's a teacher, so she's out, she's doing online stuff, but she's not, in the classroom. So it doesn't mean that you have to do a date at, 7:30 to 9 and go to the movies. It means you can do a lot of stuff. So he happens to have a motorcycle. They got on the motorcycle and they drove up to a place, and they actually brought some I think some like apple cider and some cheese and things like that. And they sat up, with a beautiful view, and they sat there for a while, connected. It was great. And I think you can be really creative still with your dates. One Saturday, Kathy and I sort of went on a date, and we ended up here in my office because of having people in our house. So we ended up here in my office. There's a couch and a whatever, and we had the best time. We stopped by a place and got some acai bowls, which is what they are big in Hawaii. And we were supposed to be on vacation in Hawaii, so we had some acai bowls, and we ate and we talked. And all of a sudden we looked up, and I said, "Gosh, it's been like 2 hours." Well, it wasn't super fancy, it wasn't super romantic, but it was important for us to connect on a different level. So I think that's what you do.
I love that idea of rethinking date night. A lot of local businesses, dropping
Yeah.
their prices, coming up with different ways. You could do a
Yeah.
curbside takeout. You go
Yeah.
to some place. We don't have the views quite like you go to the Mississippi River here, I guess. We don't have
Hey,
the
I
views.
think there's some beautiful views on the Mississippi.
There are some good ones, and I know now Memphis has started to close some of that because
Yeah.
Tennessee's got different laws than we do right now. So, but there are some great places to go on a date night like that. So I think those are great ideas. Well, Jim, I want to say I know you've got to run, but I want to say thank you so much for the time that you've
Sure.
given us. Any last things you can think of, just encouragement for parents during this time?
No, I would simply say to parents, it is rough. Admit it. Experience the loss and know there's going to be more tension. At the same time, this is a time for us to be proactive. Kathy and I have been using a phrase in our house because, again, we were empty nesters until kind of recently, and today now it's chaos, but we love the chaos because it's grandkids. But the phrase has been, does it really matter? And I mean, some things matter. You have to have some conversations, but most things don't matter. So don't make everything a big deal. Have some adaptability. I think one of the great traits of a successful relationship with your kids and obviously with your spouse if you're married is adaptability. So just kind of go, hey, does it really matter? Winston Churchill said, don't throw stones at every dog that barks or you'll never get to your destination. So don't make this a time where there's lots of infighting. Make it the time where there can be some fun and cheerleading and know it's going to be different. Know it's just as hard for that other person as it is for you.
That's great. The great way to end. Thank you so much for your time. And you've been a mentor to me and to so many other people who've worked in ministry. We just want to say thank you for all that you've done for so many people.
Hey, sure. Thanks, Joey. Great to see you again. And glad you're near Memphis. One of my favorite spots in the universe is Memphis, Tennessee. So I love where you live. I realize you don't live right there. And I think I would want to live a little outside of Memphis too, but it's a great place. Barbecue. Oh my God.
Barbecue. All the good barbecues here. Yeah. We need to bring you in and just do a tour of the barbecue and you can see
you and I could do that. We could do that and then we'd gain some weight. What can we say?
Probably would gain a little bit. It'd be keto all weekend. Just eat all the meat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, you have a great day.
Okay, you too. Take care.